Boom. Look at that. I love it when it works. All right. Well, let's let this queue up here. I'm on an older, there we go, an older computer. So we'll see how this goes. Anyway, thanks. Ed asked me to give this talk about baseball to a European-centric meetup group. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm sure you guys have really been waiting to hear about baseball. I know how much fans you guys must be of this, but this is what happens when somebody asks you, do you have something, right? How many times has that happened on Twitter? Someone says, hey, James must have this, let's ask him. Well, I was asked a question, I didn't have the data, and so this is the story of what happens when someone asks you a question for information and you're passionate about it. So baseball, right? I figure we need to go over a little bit of baseball. As I said, I think most of you know what baseball is, but just for those that aren't really in on it, I wrote this originally, it said soccer fans, but I realized you guys don't watch soccer, you watch football. So a little bit of football here. Baseball, the origins are a little wonky. People think it came from rounders. So I guess, Stephen, you're probably a big rounders player there in the UK, but or cricket, they look similar. I don't really think it's a lot like cricket other than the fact there's a ball and a bat and people are running around, but I guess everything is derived from something. Started in 1845 in New York City. Professional teams, mostly it was clubs, athletic clubs that were paid. Pretty much same story that happens with football in Europe. They were clubs and then they became professionals. Major League Baseball as we know it. So when you see U.S. Major League Baseball, it started in 1876. It was originally the National League. So if you're National League teams, those are the original ones. The American League came in 1901. So the Yankees, Red Sox, they came a little bit later, but they've been together as an organization since about 1905. My team, San Francisco Giants, they've been around since 1883, and they've won over 11,000 games. So there's a lot of baseball that gets played. And the reason why that number is interesting is I'll tell you in a minute. You'll get it. Baseball is one of the most popular attended sports. 68 million. I guess we have to wait till 2019. I don't know. 2020, the number was 0. That was easy, but 68 million. Part of that has to do with people. There's a lot of games, but there's also a lot of people go to a lot of games. For example, Premier League is 4.5 million, a lot less games. The attendance is higher, so it's not exactly equal, but still a lot of people in the US look at it. Really quick, just to go over, there's 2 teams. They play 9 innings. There's 3 outs per team per inning, so these things rotate through. There's pitchers, throws the ball, batter hits the ball. Fielders attempt to catch the ball, that's an out. If they don't catch it, they pick it up, try and throw them out. I mean, you get it, hitting out, pretty much easy. There's 9 players. All these numbers here are important, and we'll get into in a little bit why. The really cool thing about baseball data is statistically, I don't know if there's a better data set to start playing with. They call it sabermetrics. Sabermetrics came around in like the 1970s. Once computers came, people thought, oh, let's just take baseball stats, put in a computer, and then run analysis to see. Sabermetrics is the idea that, maybe Steven's not the best hitter. No offense, Steven. But in the 9th inning, when the team is down 2 runs, there's a man on third base, Steven bats 1,000. So he gets a hit every time. So sabermetrics would say, I would bench my all-star player for Steven because for whatever reason, he excels at that point. And the way they do that is through looking at a lot of stats. There's a project called RetroSheet. What they're doing is they're computerizing the box score of every Major League Baseball game ever played. So if you Google RetroSheet and you go there, you can look back in 1889 and see the Cleveland Spiders play the Buffalo Braves and see who won, who had hits, who won the game, who everything. So that's really interesting that you have that much stats to the back. There's a project called Chadwick Baseball Bureau. Chadwick's interesting. He was a Brit. He came over from Britain, a newspaperman. Late 1800s, he knew cricket, and cricket was very standardized back then. And so he was the one that basically said, we need to start calling these things. So earned run average, RBIs, all these things. He was the one that actually created that. So gentleman by Doubleday, if you ever heard of the publishing empire, he was the one that generally gets credit for creating baseball, but I think Mr. Chadwick is probably the one because he standardized everything. In honor of him, there's a GitHub project called the Chadwick Baseball Bureau, and what they do is they take all this information from RetroSheet and everywhere else and standardize it and make it easy so you can download it as CSV files and do a whole lot of stuff with it. Why is this important? If you guys have ever seen Brad Pitt and Moneyball. That's basically what this is all about, all this data. So that's baseball, and why it's passionate for me. But we're here to talk about Ballparks as GeoJSON. So map every professional baseball ballpark. It literally is tilting at a windmill. And I'll explain why this is a lot more harder than I thought when I started. People always ask me when they hear that I'm doing this, they say, well, why not OpenStreetMap, right? A lot of reasons. One was I don't necessarily like the license. I'm more of a public domain guy, and I think this is a project that I really like public domain, so that I want to put it in GitHub, want to have the data in GitHub. If you remember 2014, 2015 is when GitHub first started supporting GeoJSON files where you could actually see a map in there, and this was kind of something I played around with to do that. And these, I don't treat these as POIs in the sense that we look at amenity equals ballpark or whatever the OSM thing is. But as I said, all projects start from something. This man, Steve Pusty, tweeted at me and said, do you know where you can get lat longs for all the ballparks? And did not have it at the time. So this is what created it, and this is why I decided to do it. So, how do you even start managing ballparks? Well, he said professional, so I started defining what professional baseball is. Let me show you guys what this means. If you go to my GitHub page, you'll see that if you scroll down, you can see I have all these professional baseball leagues that are mapped in here, and Australia, Caribbean, even Europe, we've got some in there, and then some ones that have unfortunately ended. So what I do is I define professional baseball basically based on what Wikipedia defines as professional baseball. And so they're teams that pay their players, have relatively standard, things that you might think. So this is my list, and this is how I go through here. And most of the time I update it, but I think about 30 or 40 people have updated everything from one particular ballpark to whole leagues they've inputted in. Even though even though Wikipedia would show me where the stadiums are, Wikipedia is not always the best mapping source. And so I have to find the stadium, and sometimes, and we'll get into the idiosyncrasies with that, find the stadium. And then my little thing is I map lat long of home plate. That's where I've decided. If you go to Google or OpenStreetMap or any of them, you'll know, and you do a search for any stadium, right? The point for the stadium can be almost anywhere on the polygon. I've just decided, because I'm a little anal about this, that we're going to put the point right on home plate. And I guess with a baseball pitch, a football pitch, you might put it in the center of the pitch. I don't know, but that's what I did. So you can see there on the right, a little bit of code and nod of Steve of just having some in there. It's really simple. I'm not really tracking much in there, but this code here has created me a lot of problems, and I'll explain why in a minute. So the hardest problem is finding a stadium. The easiest thing is you say, hey, where are the San Francisco Giants? Where are the New York Yankees? That's really easy. But when you get into some of these other leagues, especially the ones that are in, Colombia or Venezuela or the Philippines, it's almost impossible. Teams always don't play in the same stadium. They move around. The address for the team is usually an office building. So you'll look at the Manila Rangers, and it'll be something Main Street, and you go there and it's a big skyscraper. It's because it's not where the stadium is, so it makes it difficult. Stadium names are vague. We all call our stadiums different things, and so something that somebody puts in Wikipedia or in Google or in OpenStreetMap may not be the actual name of the stadium. Whoops, what is going on here? I lost control of my, there we go. The other thing is, when I'm trying to map, I try and do imagery, and it's usually poor outside of North America, Europe, Australia, Japan, Korea. And so sometimes zooming into a stadium, you remember I said I'm kind of anal about putting the dot on the home plate, the pixel becomes literally almost the whole stadium. And then Wikipedia, as I said, it's a passionate thing, but not always doing it. So how do I search for a stadium with no information? This happens quite a bit, especially in the Philippines. They'll just have, the Philippine Professional Baseball League, and then they'll say, the Manila Rangers, and then it won't have any lat long in their stadium. So I have no idea where it is. So I use Google Images. I do a search for the Manila Rangers, trying to find somebody who's posted about it. Social media is usually really good about this. People like to leave the lat long on their photos, so you can usually see where somebody took a picture, and you can fake it that way. Oh my goodness. There we go. Ah, there we go. Old-fashioned panning. Sometimes if the city is not too big, I will just pan around it. That works for smaller cities, but obviously panning around Manila, looking for one baseball field and then trying to figure it out. Other places like the Dominican Republic, small Caribbean country, has so many baseball diamonds everywhere. And so trying to figure out which one is actually the one you're talking about becomes difficult. So this is what I got so far. So you saw that big long list. I think there's 400 or 500 baseball parks mapped in here. So you can see very centric. I'm pointing at my screen, which you can't see, but very centric to North America. But you can also see there's quite a bit in Europe and in Asia. And so it's been really fun learning about some of these leagues in certain areas. Oops. Oh my goodness. Holy cow. What just happened? There we go. Oh my goodness. Hello. There we go. So as I was saying, when you look at this, this is a typical here, the Italian Baseball League. I don't know how you guys are with the Italian Baseball League. I was never familiar with it. They've been around for a while. Sometimes they have 10, sometimes they have 5. So every year this change. Every year I have to go and figure out what teams have been added and what teams have been dropped. As you can see, Italy, for whatever reason, has a lot of teams, and these are really good. I could have used Germany or the Netherlands as well. I don't know if this is because the cultures there like baseball and they don't have cricket or something else, or maybe it's U.S. soldiers being there teaching the populace how to play baseball. I don't really know why those 3 countries are more in Europe than anyone else. But you can see, here's an example. Here's the Rangers Baseball Club. So this is kind of the problem I run into. You see the ballpark name, Campo da Baseball. I mean, I don't speak Italian, but I'm pretty much sure that means baseball stadium. So, when someone says we play in baseball stadium and you do a Google search for baseball stadium, you can't find it. So it becomes very difficult. So you have to figure out who the baseball club is, who it owns. They're usually owned by a soccer club. So a lot of times you'll find these things in soccer clubs, and then they'll have a baseball diamond, they'll play there. So it's kind of a sleuthing thing. It's a lot of fun to find this stuff. But here's this example. Here's this. They have a rugby, and then obviously some other club. But there you can see, there's their baseball diamond. Actually, it's really as it goes. The Italians have really nice baseball fields. Not much in the way of stands, but I don't think it's really a spectator sport in Italy. But unfortunately, this club is no longer part of the league. So my date is out of date. I just went to go look, and I had this example all done, and I went to go look. And of course, the one example I pulled out for my presentation, the club is no longer part of the league. But you can see this is something that I have to maintain all the time. I always like to think, if I only knew now then, what I know now then, this is what it would be. This started out as very team-centric. So the idea is I was mapping Major League Baseball. I wasn't mapping stadiums. And so what has happened is points are on top of each other. Perfect example, here in Arizona, we have spring training. And the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies share a spring training facility. So it's one diamond with 2 dots on top of it. Well, if any of you are GIS people, that's the dumbest thing ever, having multiple points on the top that mean the same thing. So I've sort of, rather than having a one-to-many relationship, which I should have, the stadium being the main and then having a lookup table, I just created points on top of each other. So part of what I want to do is clean up here, is get away from this, clicking on especially in spring training, they have a lot of people on top of each other. Makes it really difficult. How could I not have seen that? So if you're hitting and you're seeing this is like the coolest project you ever heard of. How do you get involved, right? Couple ways. One, I've got my GitHub there. So go there, fork it, look at what you have, make a change, and send it back in. Other ways to get involved with baseball, as I said, this Chadwick Bureau. That's the coolest thing. If you just need a really big, cool data set to use with for whatever, grab that, because it's got everything. It's got teams, it's got people. It's like a good demo database that you can use. And then if you like R, I love this website, Baseball R, if you're an R guy, and I get it if you're not. But if you like R, it's a really cool website where the guy really goes into doing things, including he was in that what was it, Map a Day thing, I guess in November. He did maps with R, which was really cool. And then Retro Sheet, as I said, you should go check that out as well. So that's pretty much what I got. If you guys need to get a hold of me, Twitter is always the best place. My wife says I'm on it all the time, which may or may not be true. I have a blog where I post about this stuff quite a bit. And my GitHub is at KG James, and there's a lot of baseball stuff on there. So I appreciate your guys' time. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, James. That was different. I was watching the beginning and wondering how you were actually ever going to get from baseball to geo, but you made a very nice segue there. So I've got a couple of questions. A couple of people, in fact, a couple of people named Ed have both asked why a competition that is North American is called the World Series.
Because that's all when they start in 1905, who else was playing baseball? It was the world. I mean,
but you just showed us the whole world playing baseball, or a big part of the world playing baseball.
So,
but they never get into.
Stephen, it was named after a newspaper. It was named after a newspaper called The World.
I mean, let's be honest. It's America, man.
Okay.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
There is a world championship now, and it happens every 4 years. And so teams from around the world compete in it. Mostly in the U.S., though in Japan too, they'll have preliminary ones. I think Japan has won it twice, and I think the U.S. has won it once, and I think Dominican Republic has won it once. So they get all the ball players, the best ball players, to be on these teams. It's kind of cool. I guess that would be the closest to a quote unquote World Series, but yeah, they're not going to change it.